Hello everyone, I'm here to tell you some scary stories, but in a way that helps you relax and fall asleep. If you enjoy these videos, don't forget to like and subscribe, it really helps a lot. Also, tell me in the comments where are you watching from and what time is it right now. Now take a deep breath, listen to the gentle sound of the rain, and let your mind drift into the dark, peaceful world of tonight's story. The gate the call came in at 12:47 a.m. I was parked just off Highway 71, halfway through my second cup of burnt gas station coffee, when dispatch cracked through the radio with a voice that sounded almost hesitant. Unit 314, we've got a death notification request. DPS confirms female fatality, single vehicle rollover, Route 9 near County Line Road. Next of kin at listed residence copy. I copied. I'd done a dozen of these in 16 years. They never got easier. You tell yourself they do, but you're lying. Every time you walk up to that door, you feel like you're carrying a piece of death in your pocket, like it's clinging to you just long enough to make the delivery. I started the engine. The cruiser's headlights swept across the empty stretch of road ahead. No cars, no houses, just fields and mesquite trees that looked like twisted hands against the horizon. It had rained earlier, and the mist was rolling low, the kind that makes your high beams useless. The deceased's name was Susan Miller, mid-50s, local. DPS report said she lost control, rolled her sedan into a drainage ditch just before midnight. No sign of braking. No sign of another vehicle. It was a clean accident. Too clean. Her address was about 6 miles east, an old ranch property with a single lane running up from the highway. I knew the area. Poor reception. No streetlights, the kind of place where the night feels thicker than it should. I turned onto the dirt road and slowed down. My headlights hit a rusted cattle gate chained shut but half hanging. Someone had left it unlatched. As I rolled to a stop, I saw movement, just a figure standing maybe 20 yards beyond the gate. A woman. Her clothes blended with the dark, but her face caught the light just enough to show pale skin and eyes fixed directly on me. I stepped out, the gravel crunching under my boots. "Evening, ma'am," I called. "You live here?" Her voice came soft, almost apologetic, like she didn't want to disturb the quiet around her. "Yes, officer." "I heard you coming from miles away." Her tone struck me. Not frightened, not curious, just expectant, like she'd been waiting. I told her I was there to speak with the family and asked if we could talk at the house. She nodded, saying the walk would do her good since the house sat a bit up the lane. I offered to drive her, but she refused. "No, I'd rather walk," she said, already turning toward the darkness. Something about the way she moved bothered me. There wasn't a sound. The gravel didn't crunch under her shoes. Maybe it was the wind, maybe the distance. But when you've spent your life paying attention to details, that kind of thing sticks with you. We walked. Or rather, I followed. The night had gone completely still. No frogs, no crickets, no sound of the wind moving through the trees. Just the hum of the cruiser's engine cooling behind us. The house came into view. A single-story farmhouse with a wraparound porch. One security light flickering weakly near the barn. When we reached the porch, I turned to ask her something, just to double-check her name maybe, but she was gone. Gone. I scanned the driveway. The trees, even the shadows near the fence. Nothing. I thought maybe she'd gone around back. But there was no sound, no motion. My hand went instinctively to my radio, but I stopped myself. You don't call in something like that, not unless you want to be the story everyone laughs about back at the station. I climbed the steps and knocked. After a moment, the door opened, and a younger woman appeared, late 20s, maybe early 30s, hair pulled back, eyes wide but not scared, just confused. "Can I help you, officer?" Her voice was steady. I told her who I was, and asked if her mother lived there. "Yes, sir, she does. Is everything all right?" I hesitated. "I'd like to speak with you and any other adults inside, if that's okay." She nodded and opened the door wider. "My husband's in the living room. Come in." I stepped inside, the floorboards creaking under my boots. It smelled like coffee and old wood. Family photos lined the walls, and somewhere deeper in the house, a television murmured low. I turned toward the door again, expecting the woman from the gate to follow. "I'll wait for her," I said. The daughter blinked. "Wait for who?" "The woman I spoke to outside, the one at the gate. She said she lived here. Her face drained of color. She shook her head slowly. "There's nobody else home, officer." "It's just me and my husband." I stared at her for a long second. I didn't say anything. My heartbeat thudded in my ears like a drum. I stepped outside, scanned the yard again, nothing. Just the wind picking up, carrying a faint smell of rain and something else. Like perfume. Old perfume. I radioed dispatch, confirmed I was at the correct address. Then I went back inside. When I finally delivered the message, told her that her mother, Susan Miller, had been killed in the crash, the words hung in the air like smoke. The woman didn't cry right away. She just stared past me toward the front door, like she expected someone to walk through it. Her husband put his arm around her shoulders, whispering something I couldn't make out. As they sat there, I let my eyes wander around the living room. There was a wall of framed photographs, vacations, birthdays, graduations, and in the center, a portrait caught my attention. A woman, smiling, mid-50s. It was her, the same face I'd seen at the gate. Younger, maybe by a decade or two, but unmistakable. I felt the room tilt slightly, like my balance had gone off. I didn't say anything. Didn't dare to. I just stared, hearing my own pulse echo in my head. When I looked back at the daughter, she was staring at me. "That's her," she said softly. "My mom, the one who died tonight." And I realized I had spoken to the dead before delivering the news of her death. The silence after I said her mother's name was thick enough to feel. The daughter just sat there, her face pale and still, as if her mind was fighting to catch up to what her ears had just heard. Her husband reached over, took her hand, and whispered something, too low for me to hear. I stood there, hat in hand, feeling the air grow heavier by the second. You learn to give people their moment in those situations. There's nothing you can say to make it right. You just stand, quiet and respectful, while the world rearranges itself around them. The only sound was the ticking of a wall clock and the faint hiss of the air vent overhead. Then very softly I heard something else. Footsteps out on the porch, slow, measured, deliberate. I looked toward the door. The daughter must have noticed my reaction because she asked, "What is it?" I hesitated, not wanting to alarm her. Thought I heard something outside. Her husband rose, offering to check, but I motioned for him to stay. Habit. I stepped to the door, hand resting near my holster, and opened it. The night greeted me with that same heavy stillness. The porch light buzzed, casting a weak yellow circle that barely reached the gravel drive. The mist had thickened. Beyond the glow, the world dissolved into shadow. Nothing moved, and yet I could have sworn I still heard those footsteps, fading now, somewhere near the edge of the yard. I called out, "Ma'am? That you?" No response. Only the faint rustle of leaves. When I stepped off the porch, the air felt colder. My breath showed in the beam of my flashlight as I swept it across the property, over the fence line, the barn, the driveway where the gravel looked freshly disturbed. For a split second, I thought I saw someone at the gate again, just a shape standing perfectly still. But when I blinked, it was gone. I lingered longer than I probably should have, scanning every shadow twice. Then I went back inside. The daughter was standing by the window, watching me return. "Did you see anything?" "Probably just the wind," I said, though even I didn't believe it. She nodded but didn't look convinced. Her husband brought her a blanket and guided her back to the couch. I started taking down basic info for my report. Names, contact numbers, next of kin details. My handwriting looked shaky under the living room light. As I wrote, I noticed something strange. The air inside had changed. The house felt charged, like before a thunderstorm. Static almost. The small hairs on my arms were standing up. From the hallway came a faint click, a door, slowly creaking open. The husband looked toward the sound. "That's just the spare room," he said quickly, almost too quickly. "It sticks sometimes." He stood, walked over, and pushed it shut again. But as soon as he turned back, I heard it click open a second time. This time all of us froze. He opened his mouth to say something, then stopped. His wife's eyes widened. I could see the reflection of the hallway in the glass frame behind her. A figure was standing there. Not clearly, just a shadow, faint but unmistakably shaped like a person. Shoulders slumped, head tilted slightly like someone watching from the doorway. I spun around, hand going to my weapon. Nothing. The hallway was empty. The husband cursed under his breath. "Jesus!" the daughter whispered. "That's where Mom used to stay." Her voice broke on the last word. The temperature dropped another few degrees. You could feel it, a sharp chill that had no business being inside a Texas farmhouse in late summer. A faint smell of flowers filled the room. Lavender, I think. I'd smelled it earlier, out by the gate. The daughter clutched the blanket tighter. She used to spray that before bed. Said it helped her sleep. Nobody moved. Then came the sound again, the faint creak of a floorboard down the hall, followed by another, and another. The husband stood. I'm not doing this," he muttered and grabbed a flashlight from the kitchen counter. I followed him more out of instinct than choice. My boots felt too loud against the old wood. The beam of the flashlight cut through the dark as we made our way down the narrow hall. The door to the spare room was half open now, swaying just slightly. The smell of lavender grew stronger. Inside, everything looked untouched. Bed neatly made, dresser clean, curtains still drawn. But on the nightstand sat a glass of water, half full. Condensation running down the side like it had just been poured. The husband whispered, "That wasn't there before." He backed up a step, bumping into me. I caught him by the shoulder, steadying both of us. Something flickered in the corner of my vision. I turned toward the mirror above the dresser and froze. In the reflection, for less than a second, I saw her, the woman from the gate, standing behind me. Eyes empty but not angry, just sad, watching. I spun around. Nothing. The air was still. But the water on the nightstand rippled once, as if something had moved through it. We left the door open after that. Neither of us said a word as we walked back to the living room. The daughter was standing, arms wrapped around herself, eyes on the hallway. "I smelled her," she said quietly. "Didn't you?" I didn't answer. Some things you can't explain without sounding insane. I finished the report, told them I'd send someone from victim services by in the morning, and offered to have a deputy stay nearby for the night. They refused, saying they'd be fine. When I stepped back outside, the fog had thickened so much I could barely see the cruiser. As I opened the door, I caught one last sound, soft, distant, like a woman's voice calling from somewhere near the gate. A single word. My name. The fog was the kind that swallows sound. It hung low over the fields, pooling in the dips and hollows, drifting across the gravel lane like it had a mind of its own. I sat in the cruiser for a while before turning the key. The headlights lit up the mist, thick and milky, making the road ahead look more like a wall than a path. I checked the rearview mirror once, then twice. The farmhouse porch light flickered in the distance, on off on again, and then it went dark altogether. I told myself the bulb had just burned out. But that didn't explain why my hands were still shaking. Dispatch came through just as I pulled onto the main road. 3 to 14, status check. I keyed up. 314, clear. Notification delivered. Copy that, 314, time logged 0153, drive safe. Her voice had that same tired professionalism we all used after midnight. But there was something else under it. A static hum, faint, like interference bleeding through the line. I tapped the mic. "You breaking up, dispatch?" No response. Just a soft hiss, then click. Silence. I adjusted the volume and tried again, but the channel was dead. The screen showed full signal. No reason it should have been down out here. The radio went back to life suddenly, loud enough to make me flinch. But it wasn't dispatch anymore. It was something else. A voice garbled, whispering low. At first I thought it was a feedback loop, maybe a stray frequency bouncing from a nearby unit. But there were no other units within 20 miles. I turned the dial slowly, trying to isolate it. The whisper cut through, clearer this time. Just a few words. "You shouldn't have stopped." My stomach went cold. Static roared back in, washing the voice away, and the line went dead again. I drove on. The road felt endless, each mile marker swallowed by fog before the headlights could reach it. I slowed to 20 just to stay on the lane. At one point I saw taillights ahead, 2 red dots cutting through the mist. I eased up, thinking maybe DPS still had a unit near the crash site, but when I rounded the next curve, the lights vanished. No skid marks, no turn-off, no sound of an engine. Just the same lonely road. For the first time that night, I reached for the small cross that hung from my dash. My mother had given it to me after my first year on the job. I never thought much about it until that moment. The air in the car felt heavy again. I cracked the window to clear it, but instead of fresh night air, a faint smell drifted in. Lavender. I shut the window fast. By the time I hit Highway 71, the fog began to thin. My hands still wouldn't steady on the wheel. I kept thinking about that voice on the radio, the way it had said those words like it knew me. Like it was right there in the car. I pulled over at the first gas station that showed a light. It was one of those all-night places with a single pump and a flickering neon sign. The clerk was half asleep behind the counter. Didn't even look up when I walked in. The clock above the register read 2:27. I bought another coffee and stood by the window, watching the fog slowly peel back from the asphalt. When I took my first sip, I saw something in the reflection. In the glass pane beside me, behind my own mirrored face just over my shoulder, was the faint outline of a woman, hair loose, eyes fixed forward. I turned around so fast I almost spilled the coffee. The store was empty. I didn't say a word to the clerk. Just left the cup half full on the counter and walked back out to the cruiser. The night was quieter now. Too quiet. The air had gone completely still. When I sat back in the driver's seat, the radio came to life again on its own. One short burst of static, followed by a click, then a voice, soft, familiar. Drive safe, the same words dispatch had said earlier. Same tone, but it wasn't her. I stared at the mic for a long second, waiting for something else, but the line stayed dead. I finally put the car in gear and pulled back onto the road, heading toward the station lights faintly glowing over the horizon. And all the while, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was still sitting in the passenger seat, quiet, watching just close enough for me to sense, but not to see. The station was half lit when I got back, just the main hallway fluorescence buzzing overhead, casting that pale blue-white that makes everything look colder than it really is. Most nights, after 3 a.m., the place feels more like a mausoleum than a workplace. The coffee pot's burnt dry, the vending machine hums like it's trying to fill the silence, and the dispatch office glows from behind its glass like a fish tank. I hung my jacket on the hook, logged my return, and felt that uneasy relief that comes after any death notification. You're done with it. But it's not done with you. I walked past the evidence room toward my desk. The building creaked once, settling. Somewhere in the distance, a printer started up on its own, then stopped. My computer took forever to boot. The hum of the server fans filled the silence. On the screen, my login flickered once before it accepted my password. I started typing the report. Routine words, cold and clinical, arrived on scene. Contacted family. Notification made. Daughter and husband present. But my fingers stopped when I got to the part about the gate. What was I supposed to write there? I stared at the blinking cursor, my reflection faint in the dark monitor glass. If I put the truth that I'd spoken to someone who shouldn't have existed, it would be career suicide. Nobody would believe it. Hell, I didn't believe it. So I wrote it plain. Contact made with homeowner outside residence prior to approach. That was it. A simple line, no lies, no truth either. The phone on the corner of the desk rang once. Just once, then stopped. I waited. No second ring. No missed call light. When I lifted the receiver, the line hissed faintly, like an old record static before the song starts. Then came a voice, soft, female. You told them. It was only 2 words, but my stomach dropped. I slammed the receiver down and stared at it. The sound of the impact echoed down the empty hall. Then from somewhere near dispatch, I heard a door open and close, slow, deliberate. I called out, "Angela?" "That you?" No answer. I stood, the chair rolling back slightly on the tile. The air in the hall felt colder now, though the AC hadn't kicked on. As I walked toward dispatch, the motion sensor lights flickered one by one ahead of me, each one taking a second too long to come on, like they were waking up reluctantly. The glass wall to the dispatch booth was fogged slightly from inside. I leaned closer. No one was there. The chair was spinning gently like someone had just gotten up. The radio console lights blinked in steady rhythm. Everything looked normal, except for one line on the log screen. Incoming call. 2:47 a.m. Origin private number. Receiver unit 3 to 14 active line. That was my call sign. The timestamp was from 15 minutes ago, right around the time I'd heard that voice on the road. I backed away slowly, eyes locked on the monitor. My reflection in the glass looked distorted, stretched by the curve of the window. Then the reflection moved. Not me, just behind me. A faint outline, a woman's shape, barely there. I turned. Nothing. But the smell, faint lavender again, hung in the air for just a moment before fading like smoke. Back at my desk, I sat down and tried to breathe normally. I pulled up the DPS accident report on the terminal. The crash photos were already uploaded. Headlights off, car on its roof, glass everywhere. Susan Miller. Time of death, 12:41. AM approximate time of discovery, 12:46. AM the notation froze me. Dispatch had given me the call at 12:47. I'd arrived at the residence at once out, but the woman I met at the gate had said she heard me coming from miles away. There was no way she could have known that, no time for it. Unless she'd been waiting, or something else had. I saved the report, logged off, and leaned back in my chair. The hum of the lights above seemed louder now, pressing against my ears. From down the hall, the printer started again, paper feeding through, slow and mechanical. I stood and walked toward it. A single sheet slid out and landed on the tray, face down. When I flipped it over, my throat went dry. It was the photo from the crash report, Susan Miller's car. Only in this printout, there was a faint shape visible in the driver's side window, a reflection of a uniformed officer standing by the wreck. The impound lot smelled of oil, rust and wet asphalt when I arrived. The morning fog had lifted, leaving the remnants of dampness clinging to the chain-link fence. I parked near the row of tow trucks and stepped out, boots crunching on gravel. The air was crisp, unnervingly quiet, like the world itself was holding its breath. The clerk at the gate, a bored older guy with more years than interest, barely looked up as I showed my badge. "Miller's sedan?" I asked. He squinted at the paperwork, then waved me toward the far row. "Number 47. Been here since last night." I walked past a line of dented pickups and older sedans, stopping in front of a crumpled grey compact on a flatbed. Its roof was caved, glass shattered, airbags deployed. The scene on the tow slip matched the crash report. I snapped a few photos with my phone, protocol, insurance, evidence. As I lifted the camera, I caught a reflection in the shattered driver's side window. For a heartbeat, I thought I saw myself standing there. Then the reflection shifted, or maybe it hadn't been me at all. The outline of a woman, faint, standing just behind the glass, watching. I blinked. Nothing. The lot was empty except for me. I crouched to inspect the impact marks. The car had rolled cleanly. No skid marks, no other vehicle in sight. Perfectly mundane, except for the lingering feeling of eyes on me. I glanced at the photos I had taken on my phone. Zooming in, I noticed what made my stomach tighten. In one shot of the interior, a faint shape was reflected in the shattered glass. Indistinct, but definitely there. Not on the outside. Not in the car, but visible in the reflection, as if someone had been sitting in the passenger seat. I checked and rechecked the angle. Nothing outside the frame could have caused it. I didn't put anyone in the car, didn't touch anything that could cast a shadow. And yet the shape remained. The feeling of being watched grew stronger. Every subtle sound, the wind through the chain-link fence, the drip of water from the roof of a nearby shed, even the distant rumble of traffic felt magnified. I shook my head. Focus, evidence, facts. I took another picture. Same thing. Same faint outline. I crouched and pressed my eye closer to the window, trying to confirm what my camera had captured. The interior was empty. Dust motes floated in the weak sunlight. The seat upholstery was indented only where it had been crushed by the crash. I backed away slowly. As I turned toward my cruiser, I caught a movement at the edge of my vision. A shadow. Too human-shaped to be a passing cloud, but it didn't move the way a human would. I spun nothing. Back at the station, I reviewed the images on my computer, pixel by pixel. Nothing could explain the faint outline in the passenger side reflection. No double exposure, no digital glitch, just something. Wrong. I felt the hair on the back of my neck rise. The faint scent of lavender filled my office. I pinched the bridge of my nose and took a deep breath. You're seeing things. You're tired. Late night calls, fog, isolation. Protocol says these are just stress artifacts. That's all. But my gut told me otherwise. Something had been there last night. Something had been watching. And I wasn't ready to admit it yet, but I knew it hadn't left. I didn't sleep much that night. The office was quiet, dark except for the soft hum of the monitor. My chair creaked when I shifted, and every sound, the dripping of the roof, the distant siren on Highway 71, felt amplified. I kept the crash photos open on the screen. That faint outline in the passenger side reflection stared back at me every time I blinked. My rational mind scrambled. Glare. Shadow, digital artifact. But none of it fit. I heard it before I saw it. Footsteps. Slow. Measured. Across the linoleum floor outside my office. Not the rhythm of anyone walking to the restroom. Not the dispatcher's usual shuffle. These were deliberate, heavier, closer. I froze. The steps stopped just outside my door. Hello? My voice sounded hollow in the quiet. No response. The door creaked once. I stood and pressed my hand to the handle. It wasn't locked. The station's hallway was empty. Lights hummed, computers were on, but no one moved. I leaned against the wall, chest tight, trying to calm the sudden surge of adrenaline. You're tired. Stress. Hallucination. That's all. I turned back to my desk and noticed something that hadn't been there before. A single sheet of paper lying on top of the stack of crash photos. I hadn't placed it there. My handwriting wasn't on it. The words were typed, small and precise. You saw me. I saw you, I swallowed hard. The faint scent of lavender drifted into my office, almost imperceptible, but enough to make the hair on my arms rise. I dropped the sheet. When it hit the floor, it seemed to settle differently, almost alive. The monitor flickered, briefly showing the reflection of the office behind me. For the briefest instant, I saw her standing in the doorway, hair loose, head tilted slightly, watching. Then the image returned to normal. I tried to rationalize it. Camera glitch, reflection, fatigue, stress. Every fiber of my training screamed at me to record, report, verify. But something deep in my gut whispered, don't reach for logic. Not yet. I leaned back, listening. The station was quiet again. The hum of electronics, the distant water dripping, the faint wind through the vents. Nothing else. I forced myself to pack up. I had paperwork to finish, evidence to log, protocol to follow. Before leaving, I glanced back at the hallway. A shadow lingered just beyond the fluorescent glow. I blinked, gone. Outside, the parking lot was empty, fog rolling low across the asphalt like it never left. My cruiser's lights reflected in the slick surface. I climbed in, door closing with a click that felt heavier than usual. The faint sense of being watched lingered. I started the engine, headlights cutting through the mist, and from somewhere inside the cruiser just behind me, I heard a whisper. Don't leave. The road stretched ahead like a black ribbon swallowed by the night. The fog had returned, thicker this time, curling around the tires, masking the ditches and fence lines along Highway 71. My headlights cut a narrow path, and the world beyond them was nothing but grey and shadow. I gripped the wheel tighter, the whisper from the cruiser lingering in my mind. Don't leave. I told myself it was fatigue, my brain playing tricks. Law enforcement officers get used to late-night calls, to the adrenaline crashing into quiet moments. But this was different. Something about tonight pressed against the back of my skull. The radio was silent until a soft click came from the dashboard. Static first, then home. I yanked the volume knob. Nothing. I tried scanning the channels. Nothing but empty static. Every instinct told me this was normal. Interference from rural transmissions, but the tone, it sounded deliberate enough to make me flinch. I glanced in the rearview mirror. Fog. Road. Empty. Nothing else. I passed the turnoff for the Miller property, and my pulse spiked. I hadn't planned to stop, but the road felt wrong. Every fiber in me screamed, look. I slowed the cruiser, and just past the gate I thought I saw a figure on the edge of the fog, a woman, pale, standing perfectly still. I blinked. Gone. I exhaled, trying to settle my nerves. No one's there. You're tired. You've driven 100 miles today. It's nothing. Still, the hair on my arm stood up, and I could feel the weight of the night pressing closer, the shadows on the road seeming thicker, almost tactile. I thought about the crash photos, that faint outline in the reflection, the paper on my desk, that whisper. Something was following me, not in a car, not on the road, but with me. Something patient, waiting for the right moment. The temperature dropped in the cruiser. I could see my breath fogging the windows. I reached up to adjust the visor mirror and froze. In the reflection over my shoulder, I saw her, not fully there. Almost transparent. Hair loose, head tilted, watching. I spun around. The seat was empty. The lavender smell came again, faint, almost comforting, almost sad. I drove the rest of the way in silence. Each mile marker I passed felt like a small victory, as if distance alone could protect me. The lights of the station ahead were faint but real. I parked, cut the engine, and sat for a long moment. The fog swirled around the cruiser, and for the briefest instant, I thought I saw her in the mist, standing by the tailgate. Then the fog shifted. Gone. I left the cruiser running and walked into the station. The sense of eyes on me didn't disappear, not entirely. It lingered in the corners, in the hum of the fluorescent lights, in the static of the radios. I knew it wasn't over. It never would be. Not tonight. The station was quiet when I returned from the drive. Empty hallways stretched under flickering fluorescent lights, the hum of the AC faint but constant. My footsteps echoed against the linoleum, a sharp rhythm that felt louder than it should in the dead of night. I headed toward the locker room to stash my gear, but a movement at the edge of my vision froze me. A shadow, long, dark, impossibly still, shifted along the wall near the evidence room. I blinked. Gone. Too many times tonight. I thought I'm seeing things. I tried to focus on routine paperwork, logging evidence, checking the accident file one last time. But every time I glanced up, I felt it. That weight of being watched. The coffee machine sputtered on the counter, then whirred as though someone had pushed the button. I hadn't. The smell came next, lavender. Faint just behind my nose, I spun slowly. Empty room. The phones on the desk rang briefly, once, twice. I didn't pick up. The radios clicked with static, nothing else. Then came a faint noise from the hallway. Soft, deliberate steps. They stopped just outside my office. I held my breath, waited. Nothing. I walked cautiously to the hallway. The shadow stretched across the tiles, elongated as though the fluorescent lights themselves were bending. I called out. "Hello, is someone there?" No answer. I edged toward the dispatch booth, flashlight in hand. My reflection in the glass flickered. For a heartbeat, I saw her again. Hair loose, head tilted, standing just behind me. I spun. Empty hallway. I returned to my desk, shaking slightly, trying to rationalize. Stress, fatigue after midnight. You've seen more than your share of death notifications. That's all it is. I checked the photos once more. The faint outline in the passenger side reflection still lingered. The paper from the desk last night was gone. I hadn't touched it. Then I heard it, a soft whisper just behind my left ear. "Don't leave." I froze, the lights flickered. The shadow in the hallway shifted. I swear it paused to watch me. I turned, heart pounding. Empty. By the time I forced myself to leave, I wasn't sure if I'd been followed or if I'd imagined it. The night outside was still, thick fog curling low across the parking lot. I climbed into my cruiser, doors locking with a click that sounded louder than usual. The station lights flickered one last time. I felt it, eyes on me, lingering even as I started the engine. And I knew without a doubt it wasn't done. The station was quiet. I'd parked my cruiser in the usual spot and walked in, keys jingling, boots echoing against the tile. Every step felt louder than it should in the empty building. I kept expecting, well, I didn't know what exactly, but the weight of the night pressed against me like a thick fog. I sat at my desk, logbook open, computer booting up. I needed to finalize the report, close the night. Routine, procedure, paperwork, focus. That was all that mattered. Then the radio clicked, just a soft, brief static burst at first. I didn't recognize the channel. I glanced at the display, Unit 314 status check. I froze. That was my call sign. I pressed the mic. Dispatch. 314, who's this? Static. A low hum then, almost inaudible, like someone speaking through a faraway tunnel. Don't leave. I pulled back, heart hammering. I checked the channel, all scanning, all clear. Nothing on the radio should have transmitted my own call sign, let alone that message, I rationalized. Maybe an old unit left on. Maybe interference from a repeater tower. It wasn't real. Just static. Just fatigue. The radio clicked again. This time the words were unmistakable, clear enough to make me flinch. "I'm still here." I lifted my eyes slowly toward the hallway. empty. Computers hummed. Monitors glowed. No one moved, yet the sensation remained. Heavy, almost tactile, like someone was standing just behind me, I stood, slowly, methodically, walked the length of the office. Every corner, every desk, every dark hallway I passed, I saw nothing. Still, the lavender smell lingered faintly, barely perceptible, but unmistakable. I returned to my desk and stared at the computer screen. My log report glowed blank, cursor blinking. I'd written all the routine details, but now I hesitated. The call had been impossible. There was no logical explanation for it. No one else in the building. The scanner showed only background noise, yet the radio had spoken. I didn't touch it. I didn't call dispatch. I sat there in silence, letting the hum of the electronics fill the room, listening to the faint creak of the building settling. And I knew deep down that the night wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Dawn came reluctantly, pale and hesitant over the horizon. The fog that had haunted the night finally thinned, retreating into the fields and low hollows of the highway. I drove back toward the Miller property, though not because I had to. I wanted closure, or maybe just proof that the night hadn't been some combination of stress and exhaustion. The highway was empty. Morning sounds were faint, birds stirring, a distant engine hum. Everything normal, everything mundane, yet every instinct I had screamed that the night had changed something. I arrived at the property. The gate was closed this time, nothing out of place. The farmhouse sat quiet in the early light. No shadows, no flickering lights, no lingering lavender. I parked, stepped out, and walked the driveway. Gravel crunched underfoot, normal, nothing unusual. The wooden porch was still. Windows reflected the early sun. I peered inside through the glass. Family photos, furniture, everyday objects in their usual places. Nothing moved, nothing. Yet back at the station I completed the final report. Typed every fact, every detail I could confirm. Times, names, calls, the crash photos, observations. Nothing about shadows, whispers, or the faint shapes in reflections. It would all stay in my head. A record of events would survive, but the rest, the unease, the inexplicable presence wouldn't. No one would believe it anyway. And yet, even as I left the station, keys in hand, the faintest hint of lavender brushed past me in the morning breeze. I froze, but the feeling didn't last. The day was bright, the sun cutting across the asphalt. Rationality returned slowly, the tension easing. Still, I couldn't shake the certainty that she hadn't gone anywhere. That night, that voice, the faint reflections, the whispers, they were real. Maybe not in a way anyone else could see, but real enough to leave their mark, heavy and quiet on anyone who encounters them. I climbed into the cruiser one last time, glanced in the rearview mirror, and saw nothing, just the road ahead for now. The fog was gone, the radio silent, and morning light stretched across the highway. But some things, no matter how much daylight comes, never truly vanish. The night leaves its shadow, and some shadows follow the end. It started 2 nights ago, and I still can't believe I'm writing this. I keep glancing over my shoulder as I type, every creak of the apartment sounding like someone is standing just behind me. I don't know how much time has passed since the first message. I barely slept last night, but I feel like hours are stretching into days. 2 nights ago, around 11:17 p.m., my phone buzzed. I froze the instant I saw the sender, Mom. My heart slammed in my chest. Her number had been disconnected after the funeral. She's been gone for almost a month. The funeral itself still feels like a haze, a dream I keep trying to shake off. And now this message made it feel like that dream had cracked open. "Did you lock the door?" It said. I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the keypad. Part of me screamed that it was a scam. Maybe someone had somehow gotten an old number. But then why would they ask a question so mundane, so personal? It didn't feel like a scam. It felt like her. I tried calling, but the number was disconnected. I sent a reply anyway. "Who is this?" My hands were trembling so badly I could barely hold the phone. No answer came at first, but then nothing. Silence. Hours of silence. I tried to convince myself it was just a cruel coincidence or my mind playing tricks, but that night, sleep refused me. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, counting the seconds between my own heartbeat and the sound of distant traffic. The apartment was silent, almost too silent. I kept thinking I could hear whispers, but whenever I strained to listen, they stopped. Then yesterday it came again, a simple message. Someone's in the hallway. My stomach dropped. My phone slipped from my sweaty grip. I forced myself to get out of bed, creeping toward the hallway. Nothing. The hall was empty. I checked every corner, every shadow. My front door was locked. Windows shut tight. The air felt thicker, heavier. My own breathing sounded foreign, too loud, echoing like I was somewhere I didn't belong. I didn't sleep at all last night. Every creak, every distant hum of the city, every shadow in the corner of my eye made my heart lurch. I thought about leaving, about calling the police, but I didn't. Part of me was too terrified to admit that something real was happening, that maybe my mom's voice, or whoever or whatever was sending these messages, was trying to tell me something. And then tonight, I decided to respond. I typed slowly, carefully, "Who is this?" The reply came almost immediately. My phone buzzed violently in my hands. A photo appeared, blurry, taken from the end of the hallway. I stared at it. My own self appeared on the screen, sitting on the bed looking at the phone just as I was now. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped it. And then behind me, faintly, just visible in the grainy image, a woman's silhouette. Her hand was reaching toward my shoulder. I dropped the phone. I bolted for the hallway, adrenaline screaming through my veins, but no one was there. Every instinct screamed that I was being watched. I glanced back at my bedroom. Empty. I picked up the phone again, hands trembling so badly that the screen flickered. My thumb hovered over the image, zooming in. The silhouette was clearer now, just slightly. A woman, Mom, or someone who had worn her face. I tried to call the number, but it went straight to voicemail. A cold automated voice said it was no longer in service. And then my phone buzzed again. A text. "Don't be scared, honey. I just wanted to make sure you were safe." I sank to the floor, tears filling my eyes. My voice barely escaped my throat. "Mom?" Then the next message appeared. Shaky letters, uneven, like someone was typing while trembling. "He's in the house," I froze. The words seemed to hang in the air, thick and heavy. And then I heard it, a floorboard creaking behind me. Slowly, deliberately, I turned. And there he was, or it. A man-shaped figure, but wrong. The face blurred, smudged, like someone had tried to erase it but failed. I stumbled back, my mind screaming at me to run, but my legs felt like lead. My phone slipped from my hand, screen flickering, words glitching in and out. Then for a moment Mom's photo appeared again. The phone vibrated violently and a voice message played automatically, weak, distorted. Her voice, "I tried to warn you." He followed me from the other side. The lights flickered, then went completely dark. I could still hear her voice, soft and loving, whispering, "I love you," and beneath it, breathing, closer, right behind me. That's when everything went black. This morning I woke on the floor, phone in hand, everything gone. Texts, call log, even the photo of the silhouette. But one new message remained. No number, just words. "See you tonight, sweetheart." And I don't know how I'm going to survive until then. I spent the morning trying to convince myself it had all been a nightmare. My apartment looked normal enough, sunlight spilling across the floorboards, dust motes dancing in the rays. But my phone felt heavier in my hand than it should, as if it carried the memory of the night before with it. Every time I glanced at the screen, I expected that message to reappear, blinking, warning me again. I didn't leave the apartment. I couldn't. Every rational part of my brain screamed that it was impossible, that the texts, the photos, the voice, it couldn't be real. And yet I kept replaying the moments over and over. The blurred figure behind me in the photo, the way the lights flickered when she spoke, the sound of that breathing right behind me. My chest tightened thinking about it. By midday, I decided to check the locks again. I approached the front door carefully, my hand brushing against the cold brass knob. Locked, deadbolt secure, windows closed, curtains drawn just as they should be. And yet I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. Every small sound made me jump. A creak from the pipes, the soft hum of the fridge, even my own heartbeat thudding in the silence. I tried to call someone, anyone, but the phone refused to cooperate. The dial tone would start, then cut off, leaving me with that same cold automated voice, the number no longer in service. And still, every time I thought of reaching for help, The image of that hand reaching for me in the photo flashed in my mind, freezing me in place. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time felt warped, each second dragging endlessly while my nerves frayed. I checked the messages again. Gone, not just the new ones, everything. The screen was empty, like a blank canvas except for the small blinking cursor waiting for input. I couldn't help it. I typed something, anything, just to see if the phone would respond. Please, Mum, tell me it's not real. Nothing. Silence. I dropped the phone again, this time letting it clatter across the floor. My hands shook so violently I could barely stand. Then I heard it, the faintest whisper, barely audible, like a voice carried through a distant hallway. I love you. I spun around. Empty hallway. Windows still shut. My apartment completely normal. And yet the hair on the back of my neck stood on end. My stomach sank. That whisper, her voice, had been right behind me, wasn't it? I didn't want to believe it. I sat on the edge of the bed, hugging my knees, trying to calm myself, but sleep didn't come. Every shadow seemed to stretch and twist, each one more sinister than the last. My mind played tricks on me, or maybe it wasn't my mind. The air seemed heavier, thick with anticipation, like something was waiting. Around 7 p.m. I made the mistake of checking the hallway again, just to be sure, just to convince myself I was alone. I saw nothing, but the hairs on my arms stood up as I looked down at my phone. There was a new notification, not from any number, not even a name, just there, a message waiting. Do you want to see him? I froze, my pulse skyrocketed. My hands shook so badly I almost dropped the phone again. The words on the screen didn't flicker or glitch this time. They were stable, clear, deliberate. I wanted to delete it. I wanted to throw the phone across the room. But something compelled me to press it, to see what would happen. And just like that, the lights flickered. Not the gentle flicker of a bulb burning out, but a violent, erratic strobe. Shadows stretched across the walls, converging in the corners. I could hear movement from the living room, a slow, dragging shuffle like someone or something was pacing just out of sight. Then a cold breeze brushed past me. I was certain I hadn't opened any windows. I didn't look. I couldn't, my body refused. My mind screamed to run, to escape, to leave the apartment. But I didn't. And then my phone buzzed again. A picture. Another photo. It was me again, sitting in the same spot on the bed. My own face twisted in panic. But this time, the silhouette was closer, clearer. One arm stretched over my shoulder, almost touching me. I couldn't breathe. My lungs burned. And then, from behind me, a slow, deliberate creak of floorboards. Someone or something was coming closer. I wanted to scream. I wanted to move. But my body was frozen. Every nerve taut, every hair standing on end. And then, just as my chest tightened in terror, a soft, familiar voice whispered in my ear. Run, I bolted. But the door wouldn't budge. This time the message wasn't just words. A photo appeared. It was the closet, the same angle I was currently in, crouched in the corner. My phone must have captured it remotely somehow. And there, behind me in the shadows, the tall, blurred figure, closer than ever, its hand almost touching my shoulder. I screamed, a high-pitched, desperate sound, but it echoed weakly, swallowed by the oppressive silence. My own fear made the apartment feel like it was pressing in on me, the walls breathing along with me. Another message appeared, simple but chilling. You can't hide from me. I realized then that the messages, the photos, the whispers, this wasn't just haunting me. This thing had some control over the phone, over the apartment, over everything. It was everywhere. And I was alone. I pressed my face into my knees, rocking slightly, trying to make myself smaller, invisible. My mind raced, thinking of my mum, of her voice from the other side. She tried to stop this. She warned me. The phone buzzed one final time. A voice message. Hesitant, shaky, unmistakably my mom's voice. I tried to warn you, don't let him. The recording cut off abruptly. The lights flickered violently, plunging the room into darkness. I could feel it then, cold, heavy, right behind me. I didn't dare move. I didn't dare breathe, and then the whisper, soft and cruel. Come out. I want to see you. I realized that hiding was pointless. It knew where I was. It could see me. And I understood then, fully and terrifyingly, that the apartment wasn't my sanctuary anymore. It was a trap. I had to get out. But how I couldn't stay in the closet any longer. The weight of the presence pressing through the walls, the whispers crawling into my skull made it unbearable. I took a deep breath and forced myself to stand, moving slowly toward the bedroom door. Every step made the floorboards creak under my feet like alarms. The hallway beyond was dark, almost impossibly so. My eyes struggled to adjust. I kept the phone clutched in my hand, hoping it would provide some connection, some lifeline to reality, to my mum, to safety. But the screen remained black, empty, silent. Then it buzzed. A single message appearing in stark white letters. Don't turn around. My muscles tensed. My chest tightened. The instinct to run fought with the fear that turning my back might provoke it. I inched forward. The air was heavier here, colder. It pressed against my skin, against my lungs, like something solid was following just out of sight. I made it to the living room. Every familiar object felt alien, threatening. Shadows pooled unnaturally in the corners. The lights flickered, throwing the room into sharp, jarring patterns. I wanted to scream, but my throat was dry. I wanted to run, but I didn't know where. The phone buzzed again. Another photo. It was the living room, taken from somewhere high near the ceiling. And there I was, again. Except this time I was closer to the couch, and behind me, faint, blurred, distorted. It was reaching out, taller than the room, its face smeared, unreadable. A whisper in my ear made my spine freeze. Come to me. I bolted. My legs moved without thinking, carrying me toward the front door. The lock, frozen, cold, unmoving. My hands shook as I tried the handle. Nothing. Panic overtook reason. I kicked, pounded, slammed my body against it. The phone buzzed one final time. Another message, short, precise, and terrifying. You can't leave. I realized then this wasn't about catching me. This wasn't about chasing me. This was about control. Every shadow, every floorboard, every glitch in the phone was a tether. It was keeping me here, isolating me, feeding on my fear. I sank to the floor, back against the door, shaking. My mom's voice echoed in my mind. Her warnings, her love, her attempt to protect me from this presence. I clutched the phone to my chest, whispering, pleading, please, help me. A cold gust of air brushed my neck, slow, deliberate. My hair stood on end. And then the whisper, soft but commanding. You belong to me now. I didn't know if I could survive another night like this. But I had no choice. I had to keep moving, keep thinking, keep clinging to any shred of hope that I could make it through. I hadn't moved from the floor by the front door for what felt like hours, but the apartment didn't care. Time had no meaning anymore. Every shadow seemed alive. Every flicker of light a deliberate signal. The silence was thick, suffocating until the phone buzzed again. No number, no name. Just a message. I'm inside. My stomach dropped. That wasn't a trick, wasn't a scare tactic. I could feel it. The air shifted. The temperature dropped. My hair stood on end. And then I heard it. A slow, deliberate creak from the hallway. Footsteps. Not hurried. Not panicked, but precise. Deliberate. Measuring me. Testing me. I pressed myself against the door, clutching the phone like a shield. My chest burned, my breath caught in my throat. The lights flickered violently, throwing the room into strobe-like patterns. And for a moment I thought I could see it. The figure. Just at the edge of the glow. Blurred, smudged, wrong. Another message appeared. Stop hiding. I can see you, always. I realized then this wasn't just a presence. It was intelligent. It was patient. It knew every movement I made, every thought I had, and it was feeding off my fear. I needed a plan. I needed to move. But where could I go? The door wouldn't open. The windows were locked. Even the walls seemed closer, pressing in, confining me. My phone buzzed again. Another photo. It was the apartment, taken from above near the ceiling. And there I was, sitting on the floor, frozen with terror. Behind me, partially hidden in shadow, the figure's hand reached toward me. I could feel it then behind me, cold, heavy, pressing against my back like solid air. My muscles locked. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. A whisper, unmistakable, soft, cruel, right in my ear. You belong to me, I screamed. My voice echoed weakly. The figure didn't flinch. It didn't need to. The apartment itself had become part of it. Every sound, every shadow, every flicker of light, it was all under its control. I pressed the phone to my face and whispered my mum's name. Please, help me. The glow of the screen seemed to pulse in response. like her presence was still lingering somewhere, trying to guide me. Another message. She failed. Don't! I sank to the floor, exhausted, terrified. I didn't know how much longer I could survive this. Every fiber of my being screamed to run, to fight, to escape. But escape wasn't possible. Not yet, and I knew. When night falls again, it will come for me. Night had fallen again. The apartment was quiet, or at least it seemed quiet. I sat on the floor by the bedroom door, phone clutched in my hands like a lifeline. Shadows pooled unnaturally in the corners, twisting and stretching as if they had a life of their own. I didn't dare move. Every instinct screamed that even a single misstep could provoke it. Then the phone buzzed. No number, no notification sound, just a message. You can't hide from me anymore. I swallowed hard, my throat tight. My heart hammered so violently, it felt like it might break through my chest. I wanted to scream, but my voice caught in my throat. I pressed my face against my knees, trying to make myself smaller, invisible. The lights flickered, then went out completely. Darkness swallowed the room. The silence that followed was deafening, heavier than any silence I had ever known. And then the sound. Slow, deliberate footsteps on the floorboards outside the bedroom. Closer this time, measured. I could feel each step vibrating through the walls, through the floor, into my bones. Another message appeared on the phone. I'm here. Always. I couldn't take it anymore. I had to see it, had to know what I was facing. I forced myself to stand and step into the hallway. My hands shook so violently that the phone nearly slipped from my grasp. The hallway was empty, or at least it looked empty, but I could feel the presence all around me. The air was colder here, heavier, charged with something that pressed against my skin like invisible hands. The phone buzzed again. Another photo. It was the living room. Taken from the ceiling, perhaps, or somewhere high and hidden. And there I was, standing in the hallway, frozen in fear. Behind me, unmistakable in the shadow, the blurred figure. Taller than any human, faceless, hand outstretched toward me. I turned to run, but the apartment seemed to have changed. The living room looked bigger, the shadows deeper, the exit farther away. I stumbled, tripped over the rug, my chest heaving. And then, from the darkness, a whisper. You can't leave. You're mine now. I slammed myself against the front door. Deadbolt locked, windows locked, no way out. The walls themselves seemed to pulse, closing in, keeping me trapped. I sank to the floor, phone against my chest, whispering to my mom, to anyone who might hear, please, help me. And then the lights flickered one last time, before plunging the apartment into complete darkness. I knew in that moment I wasn't alone. I never had been. And there was no escape tonight or any night to come. They found this recording 3 days later. That's what the news reports would eventually say. The apartment door was locked from the inside. No sign of forced entry, no prints except mine. The neighbors told the police they'd heard the lights flicking on and off, the sound of a phone buzzing again and again. And then, nothing. But I remember every second of that night. The phone had gone dead hours earlier, or maybe minutes. It's impossible to tell anymore. Time folded in on itself, the way a room seems to shrink when you stare too long into the dark. I sat in the center of the living room, the glow from the streetlight barely touching the floorboards. I could feel the pulse of the house, the slow tick of the radiator, the hush between each creak. Then came the whisper. Not from behind me this time, but from everywhere. Do you understand now? The air vibrated with it like a voice spoken through metal. I wanted to answer, but my throat had turned to dust. The shadows began to move, slow, deliberate, drawing toward the center of the room. For the first time I saw its shape clearly. Not a man, not a ghost, but something wearing the outline of both. Where its face should have been, the air shimmered, as if reality itself refused to show me what hid there. I lifted my phone and took one picture. The flash burned white, blinding. When my vision cleared, the figure was gone. Only the echo of the whisper remained. She tried to keep me out. Now you will keep me in. Something inside the walls began to hum, a low, steady vibration that made the pictures rattle and the light bulbs sway. I understood then what my mother had meant in her messages. She hadn't been warning me of a stranger. She'd been warning me of it, the thing that had followed her from the other side. The phone lit up one last time. One message. No number. It's your turn. I pressed send on a voice memo before the battery died, a whisper I hoped someone would find. If you get this, Don't answer the messages. Don't look at the photos. Don't let it in. Then the lights went out, and the humming stopped. The rest is silence.